Everybody, welcome back to Winnemac Hockey, where today we're continuing our Offseason Analysis Series, and today we're talking about the one, the only Ottawa Senators. My name is Dom DeBomb Heater, and I am joined by Jake the Snake Armstrong and Matt the Brat Cleveland. If you enjoy NHL content, analytics, and some street hockey content, you are in the right place, and hit that subscribe button. Let's get into the video. Alright guys, today we are talking about the Ottawa Senators and kind of recapping on their offseason thus far and talking about what we think they should do potentially to continue to improve their team, because last season they finished almost at the bottom of their division with a 23-28-5 record, which is not great by any means. But hey, they made some improvements from last season, so that is something to look on. But they do have $29.7 million in cap space, which is quite a bit for not making a big splash in free agency. So, Jake, let's come over to you. Let's talk about the acquisitions that Ottawa has made and talk a little bit about those that they have lost.
All right, so first up, they brought in Nick Holden and a third rounder, in addition to free agent Michael Del Zotto. But at the cost of Joey, I think it's Decord to Seattle in the expansion draft, as well as Evgeny Dadonov, who was a part of that Nick Holden and a third trade. So not a whole lot of moves this offseason.
Yeah, which, are you surprised by that, or are you thinking that they have a plan behind closed doors that we're just unsure of?
I almost think that the GM is kind of like confused at this point. Like he doesn't know where to go, because last season he brought in a lot of guys. He brought in Dadonov and Matt Murray, and he made a lot of changes in that team. And then this offseason, he does pretty much nothing. It's hard for me to see what direction he wants to go in.
Yeah, so you mentioned Dadonov getting traded, and when they got him, I thought that was a pretty good acquisition. So let's break down the trade. Do we think that that was a good trade in Ottawa's perspective here? Matt, let's come over to you. Was getting rid of Dadonov the move, in your opinion?
No. I mean, when you look at it from their perspective, they're getting a guy back in Nick Holden, who 34-year-old guy, going to sit on your back end. And overall, their defense was already pretty good if you look at the roster without him. So really, these guys not going to bring you much value, and with their forward depth being as weak as it is, getting rid of a guy like that on the wing, that was one of their better players last season, just doesn't make sense to me. It's just kind of puzzling.
Yeah, cap definitely was not an issue, as we have just mentioned. Jake, what are your thoughts on the Dadonov trade?
Well, if you ask me, they shouldn't have even gotten him in the first place. I think they were rushing the rebuild by a good bit. And I think everybody was surprised when last summer the owner comes out and says, I think we're going to be a playoff team this season. And everybody kind of said, yeah, okay. And as we know now, that didn't happen. And now that it didn't work out, now they're starting to undo that push for the playoffs. And it almost looks like they're going back into rebuild mode, which I think is the right idea. They're not ready to come out of it yet. They've got Stutzle and they've got Brady Tkachuk, who are going to be the future of that team. But you've got time. Like, calm down. The Atlantic is stacked right now. You don't need to try to compete. Just wait, have patience, and believe in the rebuild process.
Do you think that the GM might have came out and said, or the owner, I forget who you said, that mentioned that they thought that they were going to be a playoff team? Do you think that had to do with the record low attendance that Ottawa was going through there?
I mean, I'm pretty sure their arena is in, like, the middle of a parking lot. Like, sorry, Ottawa fans. Like I want you to have, like great things. Like, I think that you guys deserve to have Stutzle and Tkachuk, and that's, your heyday is going to come. But I think that the team in the top, like at the top, just needs to start investing in the facility and make it a better experience as a whole. But yeah, that could be part of it, is he wants to, instead of investing money into the experience, he's trying to put a good team on the ice. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. All right, so it definitely appears as if they are going back to the rebuild and going to be all into that. I know that they have quite a few draft picks coming up. So that's definitely going to help. But let's talk about the guy that you just mentioned, Jake, in Brady Tkachuk. And Matt, I want to come over to you. He's an RFA. So they have the cap space. They can definitely bring it back. That's not an issue at all. How much do you think he's going to get paid? Do you think he's getting some sort of a bridge deal? Do you think they're going to lock him up for the long term? What do you think?
Well, I think with the way this roster's set up and the way that this GM has put this roster up, I think Brady Tkachuk's looking at it from his perspective as I'm one of the top forwards on this roster, and there's not much argue to that. And I'm one of the guys who's going to be going into the future as one of the best players on this roster, unless they bring other people in, of course. But I deserve to get paid. And it's something more or less like a bridge deal would normally make sense in this situation. But with a guy like him, it seems like with him being one of the better players on the team, he's got all the leverage. If he wants a massive deal, it looks like he's going to get a massive deal. So, like, I wouldn't be surprised if you saw, like, instead of like a 5-6 mil bridge deal, you saw like 7 or 8 for a guy like him, which seems kind of crazy when you look at it. But with him having all the leverage, being one of the better players, it's like this team's not going to play at all any well without him on the roster. So, plus also him being an alternate captain already as it is, he's sitting in a good spot for himself.
Oh yeah, no doubt about that. Jake, what are your thoughts? You think that he's going to get that 6 mil, or do you think, like Matt said, he'll get 7 or 8?
All right, so I think the best comparable we have is his brother Matthew Tkachuk, who just got a bridge deal a couple of years ago. He signed a 3-year, $7 million contract, but at that point in his career, he had already proven more than Brady Tkachuk has so far. He was putting up better numbers. It's not a great, like, it's not a lot more than Brady's doing. Brady's putting up great numbers already, but it's not quite at that Matthew Tkachuk level. So I think that he will get 7 for 3 years, literally the exact same contract, for the reasons that Matt said. I think he's going to get a little boost in value because he's the alternate captain already, because he's one of the best forwards on the team already, and because he is the future of that team. So I don't think he's necessarily earned a $7 million contract, but he will get it for a short term until he'll still be an RFA at the end of a short deal, and then they can see what his estimated value is then. But for now, I do see him getting a $7 million 3-year deal.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense because he knows as well as we do that they have that cap space just kind of chilling there. And why not get paid, especially if you're one of the top guys on the team already? So, yeah, I think you guys' thoughts are valid there. I think that he's going to get that kind of money. I definitely see that. So, it's kind of surprising to me personally that Ottawa has not made more moves during this offseason. Is it surprising to you guys? And if you're in the GM spot, is there a move that you're potentially thinking about making to give this team a little bit more of a kick? Matt, I want to start with you on this one.
Well, I first off would say I wouldn't be surprised if this GM is on the chopping block by the end of the season because looking back at it, he was the guy who was hired in 2016 while they were on the top of the mountaintop there, losing in overtime to Pittsburgh in the conference final, 1 game away from going to the Stanley Cup. So ever since then, it's been pretty much falling down as an avalanche, just going down and getting worse and worse every single season, making a lot of puzzling moves along the way. And I think he's the guy who nobody's really understood why he's done it. In some cases, maybe paying people more or paying people less than he should. And I wouldn't be shocked if he's gone. Well, anyway, to answer your point, I do have a trade in mind. I'll allude to the trade that I had in a previous video that we had that everybody should check out. I have Tyler Myers from Vancouver going over to Ottawa. I have Vancouver retaining 2 of that mil, so 4 mil coming over to Ottawa, and them giving away of a 4th. I think this, in hindsight, will make their defense even better. I think at that point, they're going to have a really solid defense. It may, in some cases, make the forward depth, a problem that the Ottawa has, look even worse with the fact that their defense is going to be even stronger. But maybe they can go along the lines of just having strong defense and hoping Matt Murray can have a bounce back, and that would be the only thing I think makes sense for that. And another trade that I have is kind of like my quote-unquote blockbuster trade, even though he's not a huge name, but I have him coming out of Dallas. Dennis Gurianov, the forward who, like I said, forward depth is a problem, especially winger depth on this Ottawa team is a huge problem. And I think with that in mind, 2.5 mil towards the cap and Gurianov, which really doesn't matter for Ottawa because they have a crap ton of money anyway. He's a guy coming off a 12-goal, 30-point season, 55 games. He's a pretty good player. And I have Ottawa sending a second and a third. I have them overpaying a crap ton because when you look at Dallas's roster, Gurianov is one of the youngest forwards on that roster right now. So he's a guy you're going to have to pay a pretty penny to get. And I think Ottawa does this, and they go forward with another winger that they desperately need.
Interesting. Very interesting. Jake, thoughts on Matt's trade proposal? And then let's come over to you with the same question. What do you think Ottawa should do? Sit tight or make some more moves?
All right, so that Tyler Myers trade. In the last video, I had a different trade, which I think also makes sense. But now realizing the amount of cap space that Ottawa has, I think that trade would really fit for them to use some of it to bring in Tyler Myers. And I'm going to segue that into my trade because it really complements my trade, really. I think Ottawa is a solid defensive team already. And I think they're going to be for a while now with Thomas Chabot there on the back end. But there's another really, really good defensive prospect that they have who's going to start getting ice time. Eric Brandstrom, who they got in the Erik Karlsson trade. Really good prospect, but I don't see as many holes on defense as I do on offense. And that's why I think that you can use him. And that's going to be a big loss for them to lose Brandstrom. But my trade is to the Winnipeg Jets, Colin White and Eric Brandstrom in exchange for Pierre-Luc Dubois and Dylan DeMello.
Holy.
Hear me out.
Okay.
Hear me out. Pierre-Luc Dubois did not have a good season in Winnipeg at all. In fact, he had he had less points than Colin White did. And Colin White also has seen better days. He's sort of starting to hit the decline in Ottawa. So I think both guys could use a fresh start on roughly the same contract in terms of value. And then Eric Brandstrom is obviously that big prospect piece that will be going to Winnipeg. And I think that makes sense too because they've got guys like they just brought in Nate Schmidt. By the time Brandstrom's ready to take the reins as the big dog on Winnipeg's back end, Nate Schmidt's going to be gone. So I think that would also be a good fit. It would give him more time to develop. And on the other end, Pierre-Luc Dubois in Ottawa, playing with somebody on the wing like Brady Tkachuk or Tim Stutzle, that's going to be fantastic. I think Josh Norris is also a great center for the Senators. But as shown on Daily Faceoff, their second-line center right now is Shane Pinto. I don't see that as a top six guy. So I think that a top six, including Brady Tkachuk, Josh Norris, Tim Stutzle, and Pierre-Luc Dubois, would make them a fierce competitor a few years from now.
Wow. I'm still wrapping my head around that trade. Matt, what are your initial thoughts on that?
I'd say it'd make Ottawa a heck of a lot more interesting to watch, that's for sure. I'd only hold back with the fact that Pierre-Luc Dubois, even though he did have a bad season, he only really had one season in Winnipeg, so maybe trying to get his feet wet there still and trying to figure that out. He hasn't had that time to decide whether he's a good fit or not in Winnipeg. But other than that, I mean, for Ottawa's perspective, that's amazing. I mean, you get to bring in a guy who's probably going to headline your centers for the next decade in Pierre-Luc Dubois, and then you have guys like Tim Stutzle and all these young guys on the back end, Brady Tkachuk. I mean, that could make this team very interesting and one of the better young, talented teams going in to the rest of the next seasons.
Yeah, I mean, Pierre-Luc Dubois, he was pretty good for Columbus, and Matt, I think you bring up a good point there that maybe he just didn't find his rhythm there in Winnipeg, but man, seeing him in an Ottawa jersey would be pretty thrilling. I think Ottawa fans would like to see that too. I think Jake, you mentioned
that the attendance issues. How do you get butts in seats? You bring in Pierre-Luc Dubois, PLD.
That is for sure. Hey, so with that being said, next season, believe it or not, will come very quickly. So let's look ahead and talk about who we think could potentially be the best player for Ottawa next season. They've had some young talent really shine through. So I'm curious to see who you guys think is going to be the best player for them next season. Matt, let's come over and start with you.
Well, for me, it's a no-brainer. It might be for anyone else, but I think Thomas Chabot. He was probably arguably their best player last year, and he's coming back with a vengeance this year. They have him on a long contract. He's going to be in Ottawa forever, it seems. So he's going to be that guy who's going to be the alternate captain of the back end, and he's going to play a crap ton of minutes. I wouldn't be shocked if he's one of the top in minutes played again on the defensive side, and I think he's going to, again, be their top player.
Awesome. Jake, what about you?
All right, so Ottawa fans, hopefully you can forgive me for probably mispronouncing his last name this entire video, but Tim Stutzle he's going to be the best player on that team for years to come, in my opinion. I think Chabot is also great on the back end, but I like the nice flashy forwards myself, and I think Stutzle is going to lead that team offensively. He's so creative. He can generate offense. It's fun to watch. It's just good hockey.
Yeah, I think, Jake, if that trade of yours were to come true, if the Ottawa GM is watching this video and says, hey, that's actually a pretty good idea, and brings him in, I think Pierre-Luc Dubois would take that team by storm and really thrive in an atmosphere like that. But if he doesn't end up going there and we see the roster that we currently have, I think, Matt, I have to agree with you and Chabot. I think that he is just a phenomenal player, and he does play a lot of minutes. But Jake, also your pick too. I mean, no doubt that he is going to be the future of the Ottawa Senators as well. So there's definitely a couple of them young guys that are going to thrive. So let's move on to where we think they're going to end up now that we've talked about their best players. Jake, where do you think Ottawa finishes next season over there in the Atlantic?
So this is where you Ottawa fans might turn on me again. I have them finishing 7th, but I think that's something that you have to do to get better, is you have to lose a good bit. And really it's going to come down to Ottawa and Buffalo and who wants that first overall pick more. But I think that Ottawa finishes toward the bottom. My guess is 7th, because I think Buffalo is just undeniably bad. And I think the prospects in Ottawa boost them over Buffalo. But 7th is where I have them for now, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, along with that, Jake, Buffalo is selling all of the top guys they have left. So who is going to be the guys that come in and play well for them? I don't know. So, Matt, that said, where do you have Ottawa finishing?
Well, I said in our previous video with Detroit that I had Detroit in 7th place, but battling with Ottawa there. Based on the off seasons that those two teams have had, I have now put Detroit a leg up ahead of Ottawa, so I would have them in 6th, and I have Ottawa then, agreeing with Jake, in 7th place. And like he said, it's not a bad thing. I mean, yeah, that means they're probably not in for a very good season, but you get to see these young guys play there if you're a fan, and they're gonna. I wouldn't be shocked if Tim Stutzle's making some crazy dekes and stuff, getting around people, scoring goals. So it's gonna be fun to watch them play. They're probably not gonna win many games, but they're gonna be at least an interesting watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd have to agree with you guys. I also have them finishing 7th over Buffalo. Matt, you made a good point. I had Detroit right there with them as well, but Steve Yzerman over there is doing a heck of a job making some awesome trades for his franchise. So yeah, Ottawa, I have you guys at 7th, but hey, you're not in dead last. So there's that. So guys, is there anything that I may have missed or that we may have missed that you want to bring to the table before we wrap up this video? All right. Well, hey, there we go, Ottawa fans. That's the offseason for you guys. It's been really quiet, but we'll see. There's still a lot of time left before the season gets underway, so there's a lot that could happen. And you have a lot of cap space, so who knows what your GM's up to. But yeah, so hey, be sure to give us a thumbs up if you like this video, and let us know what you think of our thoughts down in the comments below. And be sure to hit that subscribe button, guys. We'll see you next time on Winamac Hockey.